Hey, Foot Clan. Today's episode is brought to you by Harry's Razors. Harry's is so confident in the quality of their blades, they'll send you their popular free trial set, which comes with a razor 5-blade cartridge and shaving gel, free when you sign up for a shave plan. Just pay the shipping. Plus, there's a special offer for fans of this show. Enter the code FOOTBALLERS at checkout to get a post-shave balm added to your order for free. So go to harrys.com right now, enter the code FOOTBALLERS at checkout, and claim your free trial set and post-shave balm. That's harrys.com, code FOOTBALLERS.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from the FantasyJocks.com studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome into the show. Come right in. Come sit down.
Gather around, children.
Gather around for a...
Do you remember where you were the Monday night that David Johnson played against the New York Jets?
Oh, well, we'll get into it. Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast.
It's a podcast.
Andy, Mike, and Jason back again. Ready to go. Ready to get you ready for week 7?
7.
Wow.
Lucky number 7.
Well, look, we're going to talk about the Monday night game. We've also got our waivers on the show today, which is always exciting. All the guys that you should be paying attention to, picking up in your leagues. Also, full stream ahead is today. So we have our streaming quarterback options for week number 7. You know, I hit a home run last week when I wasn't here with my streamer, so that's good. You can follow us on Twitter at the FF Ballers. Check out our fantasy community at jointhefoot.com. Get involved there with about, 3,000 other listeners of the show. It's fun to bounce things off of people that aren't in your league but are good at fantasy football.
Yeah.
You know. So, quick question of the day. We're going to talk about the Monday night game, and we'll talk about Mr. David Johnson. We'll talk about everything that happened last night. It's becoming quite redundant in a good way. But what was really fun about last night is I want to set the table. So Mike and I were at the Monday night game. Jason was not, and he did not deal well with not being able to go. He had some prior obligations.
He was in the bathroom, apparently.
That was the look on his face when I left. So we went down to the game. By the way, print out your tickets when you go to the game.
Yes. Pro tip.
Mike and I were heading down to the game, and all of a sudden I go, did you print the tickets? He goes, no, I didn't print the tickets.
Well, I said, why would I have to print the tickets? And then we look at them, and it says
must print tickets.
Must print.
So we had to pull off and print tickets.
Yep.
Because it's 1994. I think we printed on a bubble jet. So anyways, here's the table for last night's game. We're huge Cardinal fans. We went to the game against the Jets on Monday night. And in our league, I had my opponent decide to be an absolute weasel and pick up Carson Palmer to play against me. So now I have my hometown quarterback who, if he does well, will defeat me in fantasy football. So
in fact, if he does okay,
sure,
he would beat you.
Sure, he would beat me. And he also had my Cardinals defense. So that just stunk. I'm showing up at this game going, what do I do as a fantasy owner? Which is, I'm sure, something everybody has faced, and why I avoid, owning Cardinals, so I don't only root for one guy to score and those type of things sometimes. But anyways, it worked out. And it worked out because Mike had a story of his own.
So, along with many of you out there, I had a very sizable lead. I wasn't even thinking about my fantasy matchup. I was up by 41 points.
That's a good lead.
My opponent had David Johnson, and while David Johnson is clearly the best of all time for fantasy purposes, thought there's no way. And then, of course, the 60-yard run happens. And we're like, yes, all right, that's fantastic. And then David Johnson, and then he scores again. And I'm like, okay, I'm still up by 20 points, but there's a whole half of football to play. And then he scores again.
He just kept scoring.
And then as they're on the final drive, and I'm up 5 points, they cannot stop David Johnson. If you were watching the game, he was unstoppable. and I have accepted my loss. I'm going to lose with a 41-point freaking lead.
Yeah, you were not doing well at that point.
And then a corner toss to Michael Floyd saves the day, and our man David Johnson ends up getting pulled. So I withstood the victory.
I've never seen Mike more excited about a Michael Floyd touchdown in my life.
There was much rejoicing and fist pumping.
Yeah, it was like nobody around us in the stadium must have understood why in the world you were that excited.
But so
for the fourth touchdown when we were up 28-3.
While I'm sure many of you did not withstand the David Johnson.
Well, if you
surge.
had him, you did.
Yes, but those playing. But I at least felt it. But
it was impressive.
I did not get the loss. So
So fantasy-wise, is David Johnson the number one running back for the rest of the season? How would you rate? I mean, for me, it's three guys. It's LeSean McCoy, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson.
Yes. You have to have Ezekiel Elliott in there. For me.
Sure. Okay. I can deal with that. That makes sense. I mean, Zeke had another big game against the number one run D this week and lost 2 goal line touchdowns to Cole Beasley.
Who?
Cole Beasley.
I believe he means the number one wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys.
that guy.
Yeah.
That guy.
So, David Johnson, though, I mean, where do you have in that mix?
I've got him number 2. I would still rather have Le'Veon Bell than David Johnson just because of history, proof of, having done it for years. But I'm not disparaging David Johnson in any way.
Lev Bell
has been great and hasn't got in the end zone. I mean, he has shown me that he still has every bit.
Well, never fear, Landry Jones is here.
Actually, the fantasy points for the running back position have gone up without Big Ben. So I think Lev Bell's fine with Landry Jones. I do not necessarily think Antonio Brown is.
Yeah,
All right.
I could agree. But for the question, I mean, he's 1A or 1B.
Is there anybody? So we named 4 guys: Elliott, Bell, McCoy, Johnson. Is there somebody out there that can take the leap into that echelon?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be DeMarco Murray if he's not there already.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fair. His offense isn't as strong as.
Is there somebody that isn't necessarily playing as that RB1 right now that you think can end up there? I'm talking like, I don't know, hypothetically like a Jordan Howard, right? Like, is there somebody that can take a step up, a leap up to you, or is this the group that we have?
To become a 1, or you're saying like a top 3 guy?
A top 5 guy.
Then I would throw Lamar Miller in there as well. I mean, if
Okay.
he continues scoring touchdowns, he's absolutely a beast.
I'm going to throw out Terrence West.
All right. I said that on the radio this morning. I said, look, you got to buy in now.
Terrence West had bell cow type usage last week.
Yeah.
And he looks great. We were all hoping for Kenneth Dixon as the stash, but the stash was Terrence West.
All right, let's move on to the news.
News and notes from around the league.
Well, say just a real quick, because we gave a shout out to my BFFs from the South, from the deep South on the show. And then on Twitter,
Australia.
Oh, okay.
And then
you confused me
and
again.
then on Twitter, our man Mick Steeney, I don't know if I'm saying that right, said, "Hey, what about the people who are in Africa?" I'm like, "Seriously? You're in Africa listening to the show?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm in South Africa." I'm like, "That is freaking crazy." So shout out.
That's fabulous.
Shout out to the continent of Africa. I mean, that's madness.
See why I told you how wrong it was that you kept saying, like, how's it going, America? You just need to be more inclusive, Mike.
Hey, shout out to the universe.
It's been a while. Let's talk about Knile Davis traded to the Packers.
Yeah.
I think that had to happen. They were obviously going to go get someone. When you only have 2 running backs there.
And let me add in, James Starks looks to be out at least 4 weeks.
Yeah, that's my point. You only had 2 running backs truly that were active and involved, and one of them has a knee surgery and is out 4 or 5 weeks. You have to have another running back. To me, this doesn't hurt Eddie Lacy. I think that, Eddie Lacy is going to be the guy there.
Yep, I agree. You have the Green Bay is playing this Thursday. They're talking about that Knile will not even be active for this Thursday, which this is the game where if there's a situation where you're going to panic and use Knile Davis because Eddie Lacy's hurt on a short week, this will be the time, but it's not going to happen. So I still think he'll be buried behind Lacy and even Ty Montgomery.
Do you like Ty Montgomery this week?
Yeah, I think he's a fine play.
All right, Andy Reid said he still doesn't think Jamaal Charles is ready for a full workload.
Andy Reid's a hater.
I think Andy Reid's smart. And Jamaal Charles looked good on his limited work, and they'll ease him back into a more full-time role. I think you can infer that there is a full workload he's aiming for from this, right? I mean, Andy Reid says he's not ready for a full workload yet. He eventually will be.
Yeah, the question is, what is that full workload that Andy Reid is talking about? Is that 55, or is that like 65?
Percent?
Yes.
You should throw in the percent.
I didn't get there. I had to sing.
Colin Kaepernick will remain the starting quarterback, so there you go.
For at least a week.
Browns coach Hugh Jackson said Cody Kessler is, quote, our starter. Uh-oh. Does this mean they're at the point in this season, and it makes sense, where you'd rather see what you have in Cody Kessler and develop him as a quarterback than put old man McCown in there.
Yeah.
Now Kessler will probably get hurt, but.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what you just said at the end is what I agree with. Cody Kessler, it makes a lot more sense for them to have him out. They're not trying to win games. They're already out of the playoff hunt.
Well, they're trying to win.
No, I'm not saying that they're not trying to win each game they're in. What I'm saying is their goal is not to like
win a Super
Bowl. Go for the Super Bowl this year. Their goal is not to become this contending team. Their goal is to build for the future. Looking at their third-round quarterback is definitely going to help that happen more than Josh McCown. But I can't imagine, given what we've seen already this year from the Browns passing game and the quarterback situation, that offensive line in the passing downs, that Cody Kessler is healthy the rest of the season. So I think you'll see McCown back at some point.
Terrelle Pryor, hamstring injury in Sunday's loss, considered day-to-day. It's not a good thing when the hamstring injury pops up.
Just keep an eye on it.
Yeah, it takes away a little bit of my excitement from Pryor this week. Pete Carroll said Thomas Rawls is still a couple weeks away from being cleared, which means C-Mike.
The woke one.
Still in business. 2 touchdowns last week.
In his 3 starts, he has been a top 10 back in each one.
That is good to know. I think you should start him then.
Yep.
This next week, they have the Cardinals in Arizona. Still starting him?
I'm still starting him, yeah.
Jordan Matthews battling a case of knee tendonitis, not expected to miss any time. Jordan Reed making strides.
I don't even know what that means.
That means he's moving forward in his concussion protocol.
Yes.
Not been ruled out for week 7. You're going to have to monitor that all week, and we'll give you some different tight end names today that you can throw on your roster if you are a Reed owner but need a contingency plan.
That was such a weird report that he's not ruled out for week 7 yet. That came out like on Sunday.
It did.
I mean, it was like, why are you already talking about whether a guy's been ruled out? That to me was like, okay, so he's going to be?
Yeah, so they're thinking about that? They're concerned that he's going to miss?
All right. Dwayne Allen diagnosed with a sprained ankle, week-to-week injury. I would expect him to miss time this week. Jack Doyle might fall into that streaming tight end.
Doyle rules.
I agree. This week, you're right.
So
Nailed it. Where are we at now? We've got Vincent Jackson, knee injury.
He's being evaluated.
You weren't playing him. I mean,
no, but
nobody was playing him.
But that moves up my man.
Humphreys?
Adam Humphreys. Pronounced with an Humphreys.
Yeah, I always wait for that. Carson Palmer left with a hamstring injury last night. You have a little bit of a shorter week for the Cardinals.
He also had said it was simply a matter of dehydration.
Well, that's good.
And then he will be good to go, which Carson Palmer is a very curious case. I made this comment to Andy on our way home that Carson Palmer is going to be this guy who just continues to get dropped onto your waiver wire, and you'll be looking at for a streamer, you'll go, holy crap, Carson Palmer, and you'll pick him up, and then you're going to lose. I mean, there is something very wrong with the passing attack. I think there's something wrong with the passing attack.
Well, let me tell you my opinion of this, because obviously as Cardinal fans, we have a good picture as to when this team is figuring things out, and they're not. I don't know if there's something wrong with the passing attack. I think the team's identity has changed.
I agree.
I think the team is a running, David Johnson-led team. You saw this last night when Arians did not threaten down the field with the passing game. Last night was the first game that happened. Arians has always been a downfield guy. Mike was losing his mind because, his start of the week was John Brown, and John Brown was really open on several plays downfield, and it was underneath. I think you saw the identity change last night.
Yeah, this was Terrelle Davis coming in, John Elway, be good, but you are not leading the team. Terrelle Davis is going to lead us.
Okay, well, that's fine.
And the defense is stepping up. I mean, 3 points last night. They are already one of the top-ranked defenses. If you have a running game in defense, you put Palmer in the position to not make as many mistakes until he gets it together. And so your point is all correct.
Okay.
You're still going to see Carson Palmer on the waiver wire.
You're gonna
Remember
pick him up
last year.
and play him and go,
it happened
crap.
last night. I would have – somebody who played against me picked up Palmer, played him against me. I was afraid of it. But he had Matthew Stafford sitting on his bench with 39 points.
Yeah.
So, all right, we got to move on to waiver time.
Put me in, coach.
Yeah, on the radio this morning, my number one guy that I mentioned was Cameron Meredith.
He's my number one guy.
Cameron Meredith, 32% owned, which is not a lot despite last week's breakout. Now you're talking, I mean, are you heated up or are you in the flames now with Meredith?
No, you're in the flames now with Meredith. I think he's shown it enough where you can be confident. Now with Eddie Royal even further injured, Cameron Meredith is great. And I saw the stat between Kevin White. I think this was
you mentioned
was
this
Jay
JJ,
Ajayi?
yes.
He had said between Kevin White and Cameron Meredith, which is basically that same role. If you put those two players together, they were second in the league in targets, and that's what you want for fantasy. We can't predict touchdowns very well. We can't always predict everything right, but targets are a great indicator of this guy has an opportunity to get involved. And Cameron Meredith looked really
15 targets last week.
15.
And no touchdowns, but still put up like an 18 or a 17-point week in our scoring format, half point.
That's Mike Evans levels of targets.
And he's Thursday playing against Green Bay and that passing defense.
That's a good matchup.
With Jeffrey on the other side. So, I mean, I think Meredith can exploit this matchup. I love him. He's in contention to back-to-back be a start of the week for me.
Yeah, I don't blame it at all.
So talk fab. Talk how much fab money, whether you'd blow a waiver position on him.
I do not blow a waiver position on him, and I do not blow a lot of fab money on him, despite all the love I just gave him.
That's
and
interesting.
I want to explain why. Because there are so many wide receivers that I like. Now, maybe in your league, Cameron Meredith is there, and all these other guys we're going to talk about aren't. But wide receivers, listen, they are a dime a dozen. I'm sorry, but they are. I'm fine trading away on my team all of my decent starting, flex type of wide receivers in a deal because I can go pick up a Cam Meredith or a Cole Beasley or a Michael Thomas or a Mike Wallace or a Kenny Britt. All of these guys are fine to start. Now, I agree. I like Cameron Meredith more. And if you're desperate for wide receivers, he would be the one I would probably target first.
Now,
but I'm just saying I'm not gonna blow my waiver position on a wide receiver.
Let me ask you this though. I understand you're saying it from a perspective of I'm going to load my bench with a guy from this list. But what if you need a 2? What if you need an actual wide receiver 2 for the rest of the season? Is it worth spending your money then? Because I don't see, some of those other guys you mentioned. There's Ty Montgomery.
There's one other guy for me that is an absolute, not necessarily a 2 rest of season, but I think he's in that 2-3 cusp. And that's Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas, to me, has shown that he is extremely involved. He's starting to take over a role that has been well established in that Drew Brees New Orleans Saints offense for years. The leading pass catcher in the history of the New Orleans Saints retires. He comes into that role, and he's been very, very involved. He's also involved in the red zone. I think Michael Thomas
scored in 3 straight weeks.
I think Michael Thomas is a great ad.
I agree completely with you can find a wide receiver. You can't find a wide receiver who's went back-to-back weeks over 100 yards and is getting 15 targets in a single game. So I would be very aggressive.
So how much would you two spend? You love Meredith. What are you dropping?
20?
Yeah, around the 20s range.
Meredith or Sammy Coates rest of the season?
Well, with the Big Ben injury, I would go with Meredith.
All right, let's talk about some other guys available on your waiver wire. We mentioned Ty Montgomery as a possible spot start. He's owned in literally no leagues. I mean, it's 0.2%. Cole Beasley's only owned in 44% of leagues. He's going into a bye, so you might not have the competition on the waiver wire for Cole Beasley, but you should grab him because he's integral to this team.
I think there's 3 good grab and stash guys.
Donte Moncrief.
Cole Beasley, Donte Moncrief, and I'm going to throw out Corey Coleman's name. Corey Coleman is much forgotten about because he's been injured for a long time. There were rumors that he might go on the IR. He didn't, and so he's not going to play this week. So, again, I think all 3 of these guys are Donte Moncrief's not going to be back this week, but this is the week where you pick one of those guys up and stash for a long-term quality player. And really, I'm not sure. I know Mike is madly in love with Cole Beasley. I'm still not convinced that long-term Cole Beasley is going to be doing what he's doing because Des Bryant's going to come back, and that will eat into a little bit of that work, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm on the Beasley train.
Are you?
Yeah. Yeah, I am.
Welcome
I mean,
aboard.
Here,
look,
listen,
the heart ring still had 8 catches in week 1, 5, 7, 3, 4,
I'm tapping
6.
my nose, America.
Now
and
look,
world.
Let's get on that train. Beep beep. Beep,
No,
beep,
I was
beep.
no. That's right.
That's the horn for Cole
Look.
Beasley. Beep beep beep. Excuse me. Beep beep. Okay. All aboard. Beep beep beep.
So you're right, because Cole Beasley's never had a game this season with more than 75 yards, and he's only scored in the last 2 weeks. So I think it's a little bit much to make. He's not a steam engine. Okay, Dez is a steam engine. He is the little engine that could.
Yeah, he's the heart ring, and
He is the heart ring.
I do love
And
Cole Beasley.
for a PPR league, I mean, what I want to see is Mike take Cole Beasley and start him over Julian Edelman. I want that. I want that day to happen.
He's not available in our league.
Yeah, and here's the reality.
Trade for him.
He's available.
Edelman straight up for Beasley.
Beasley's owned.
Beasles.
Beasley's owned at 44%.
Got a case of the Beasles?
You got a case of the Beasles.
I need a
Beasley's
vaccination.
You have a major case.
I do.
You
My
need
breakout
a
is
cream.
spreading.
Mike needs. We need to get him a cream.
Yes, we really do.
It causes you to grow like red, awkward beards.
I'm just gonna
See?
I'm just gonna tell you this.
All right, last names.
Cole Beasley's averaging more points per game than Brandon Marshall in our league. Just letting you know.
Last names on the waiver wire list to look
for a wide receiver.
Yeah, for wide receivers would be Golden Tate.
Yes.
Look, he's still a good wide receiver. Hasn't been involved. Looks like he got his confidence back. Kenny Britt, I talked about him as one of my rising stars. I would put him above Cole Beasley by a wide margin for me, especially because he's playing this week. And then Mike Wallace as a spot start looks very good as well.
Sure.
Mike Wallace this week is a great start if Steve Smith misses. I mean, you have him going up against, I believe, the 32nd ranked pass defense this week.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think he could be a home run threat. Plus the offense. They did take a couple more downfield shots with Wallace last week.
So before we get to the running backs, we want to thank today's sponsor, Blue Apron. Look, Foot Clan, you know we've been talking about Blue Apron because they're making it easy. They're making dinner easy for you. When you get home from work, the last thing you want to think about is dinner. I know. I live that life. But Blue Apron takes dinner from a drag. They take it to a snap because they're giving you fresh, high-quality ingredients, making them into fantastic recipes. You don't have to spend any of your time thinking about what to prepare because Blue Apron ships you the exact amount of each ingredient required for a recipe. And you know what? Even in doing that, they're helping to reduce food waste. And cooking is fun, again, with Blue Apron. All that money you're spending eating out or going to high-end grocery chains, you can now spend under $10 a person for an unbelievable home-cooked meal. Listen to this. Roasted pork steam buns with black garlic mayonnaise and spicy cabbage slaw. Have you ever dreamt, like, you're sitting at home, well, that's what I'm going to make.
That's exactly what I dreamt about last night.
Because Blue Apron makes that possible. And now check this out, Foot Clan. You can go look at this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping. If you go to blueapron.com/ballers, you will love how good it feels and how great it tastes to make incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron. Do not wait. That's blueapron.com/ballers. Blue Apron, a better way to cook.
They actually are really awesome.
Fantastic.
We've used them for a long time.
Yeah.
Let's talk running backs, guys. Another guy I have shifted on. Yesterday on the show, I was a doubter of Jay Ajayi, and I really readjusted my position after listening to the conversation on the show, after looking at it. Running backs are not a dime a dozen.
Correct.
Running backs are, you better sign a guy if there's a chance he can be amazing. And Jay Ajayi did everything possible on the field to earn a starting job on that team yesterday, or Sunday, with 204 yards on the ground. He outscored David Johnson. He outscored LeSean McCoy. That's going to earn you playing time. Even if it's not 25 carry playing time, I think you have to spend the money on Ajayi because I think you need to take the shot.
Yeah, every single time there is an opportunity for a big blow-up running back, you take the shot. I completely agree. That's why I don't want to spend my money on Cam Meredith personally, is because
You'd rather spend it on Ajayi.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and I don't even like Ajayi, but the opportunity to have a running back that can fill in and take over, we see it year after year after year in fantasy football. Someone is going to pick up a running back in the second half every year in every league that takes them deep into the playoffs. I mean, it was Tim Hightower that got me a championship last year. You got to take your shots. If it's Ajayi, that's great. If it's Jacquizz Rodgers, another guy that I really, really like, Doug Martin, we're going to have to keep watching and see if he gets back on the field or not. He wasn't in practice yesterday, and that was coming off their bye. So there's no guarantee that – I mean, we were waiting for after the bye he's back. There's no guarantee he's back, and if he's not, Jacquizz Rodgers, again, did everything possible to say, look, I'm good. He had a relationship with the head coach prior to coming there. So Jacquizz is a guy that I'm spending my money on Jacquizz because I actually think he is in that Charles Sims vein where he'll be involved when Doug Martin's back. I do think. I think he'll take that kind of Charles Sims role. But if Doug Martin is not healthy, he's going to be a beast, and we all know, we've talked about 100 times, the schedule for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is fantastic.
In the playoffs, they have New Orleans twice, right?
Yeah, from here on out, it's just a thing of beauty.
For me this week, there are two big guys. Jay Ajayi is one. The guy I want to target. We've been talking about him for weeks now, and he's still owned in only 49% of leagues, and that is James White.
For sure.
Look, James White is the perfect running back for Tom Brady. He doesn't get it done on the ground, but 8 for 47 with 2 touchdowns, 9 targets. You're talking high-level wide receiver amounts of targets for James White at the running back position. These guys do not grow on trees, and James White is where I would spend my money, fab money.
So one name that isn't written here that needs to be, I mean, Dion Lewis isn't going to practice this week, but he might be sitting on your waiver wire. Why don't you package deal those guys?
Yes.
Grab them both and then throw Dion Lewis on your IR.
But would you stash him on your bench?
Yes.
A lot of people don't have IR.
I would stash him on my bench.
I don't know, man.
I would if I have James White. Because here's what.
Yes, if you have James White.
Here's what you know. You have a weekly starter for the rest of the season on a high-powered offense. Because James White is getting it done. Look, I didn't say James White because he is still owned in about half of leagues. It's nonsense that half of leagues he's on waivers. If all three of those guys that we've talked about, Jay Ajayi, Jacquizz Rodgers, James White, are available, James White is the guy I'm picking up, especially if Dion Lewis is also available. And I'm guessing if James White is, Dion Lewis is.
Right.
Because if I could pick up both those guys, I feel like I've locked in a starting running back role rest of season.
Let's talk about a couple of other guys. Look, let's talk about the situation. I don't think Mike hadn't even really heard about this today, and nothing may come of it. But Carlos Hyde went out with a shoulder injury, and after the game, Chip Kelly said it's uncertain what it looks like for Hyde moving forward. He could be completely fine, but you need to watch the practice report today. If Hyde misses, spot start at the running back position, are you signing Mike Davis, who ran ahead of Shaun Drone this week, or are you signing Big Salad?
I would be signing Mike Davis. I think that he will be the primary ball carrier. Shaun Drone, we've seen him be great, especially when he's the only guy, but Mike Davis is a guy who's more comparable to the skill set of Carlos Hyde. So that's where I would go.
Some handcuffs to consider. Derrick Henry, Alfred Morris, Devontae Booker, Mike Gillislee. How would you rate those four guys? In order of, let's say you own none of their lead backs, the guys ahead of them on the depth chart. So how would you rank those four just in grabbing a guy this week?
I would go
stash and pray.
I'll go Booker number 1. There was also the report today that Coobs wants Booker more involved, so maybe Booker can be standalone value. That's what you love, is a handcuff that you can actually play in a pinch. Then I would go, my number 2 would be Alfred Morris here, but he's on bye, so I'm going to move Derrick Henry up for this week just because of you got to be ready if something happens to the starter, and the starter's not going to get hurt on the bye week. So Morris, Henry, then I'll go Booker, Morris, Henry, Gillislee.
I completely agree. You literally just read my brain script on everything. I love Alf.
You read his brain script.
I love Alf, but
That one's going in the poll.
much better to have a guy whose starter in front of him could get injured this week. Across the board, you nailed it. The only question I have at all is Henry versus Booker, but I agree because Booker is getting more involved, you might be able to have him fill in a flex role without C.J. Anderson getting injured.
All right, tight ends on the waiver wire that we're looking at here. We talked about Jack Doyle. He's only owned in 6% of leagues. He went 4 for 53 and a touchdown this past week, and Dwayne Allen might be missing a week. This is also a matchup that I think he can do enough in. So pay attention to Jack Doyle. Cameron Brate coming off the bye, only owned in 23% of leagues.
Playing San Francisco.
Yeah.
That is there are 3 teams that are really bad against the tight end who have waiver wire pickup candidates. San Francisco, Atlanta, and Detroit. I look at those 3 teams, and I usually try to find a tight end against them, and that's Cameron Brate. That's Vernon Davis if Jordan Reed is out. And then what do you do with the San Diego tight end? Who is it? Who are they?
I'm in on Henry. I mean,
Yep.
Gates says he's not 100% healthy, and even if he is, they're fools to not use Henry after you've lost Woodhead and you've lost Keenan Allen, and you have kind of a plethora of maybe they'll be good this week wide receivers. Henry, I'd rather start Henry let me put it this way. I'd rather flex Henry over the wide receivers in San Diego right now.
I don't blame you there because the tight end is going to get involved, and while the wide receiver is going to get involved, you don't know which one. And there's 3 wide receivers splitting. There's only 2 tight ends, and really Gates doesn't get involved that much until down near the red zone. So let me ask you this: you pick them up. Who are you starting this week if you have to start Cameron Brate or Hunter Henry?
I'd probably stay in the flames with Hunter Henry.
I think I go Brate, especially with the Vincent Jackson knee injury. Brate's going to be more involved. Mike, tie-break this for our listeners.
I'm gonna go Hunter Henry. I'm with Andy. I think the concern I have is I'm not as confident as Andy with it. You have the wide receiver roulette. And you feel like the tight end's safe. I think the tight end is part of that. I'm just calling it pass catcher roulette for San Diego, where we saw Henry was the one who had the monster game last Thursday. It could be Tyrell Williams this week. But the nice thing about Henry is you have that high touchdown potential. Phillip Rivers loves throwing touchdowns to the tight end, and if Hunter Henry is the healthy, physically gifted one right now, that's his role.
Yeah, and the one thing, if I recall correctly, and I could be wrong here, but I think I'm not.
Okay.
Phillip Rivers on the road has been great.
Yes.
Phillip Rivers on the road has been throwing touchdowns, and this week he's at Atlanta. Atlanta's a 30th ranked passing defense right now. And on the road this year, he started in Kansas City, only had 1 touchdown. But then he went to Oakland, 4 touchdowns. I guess it's a mix. He's just been good.
Yeah, overall
he's just
Rivers
been good because his
solid.
other 4 touchdown game was at home. But he's the 7th ranked quarterback right now and somebody to pay attention to. So
I think what you're remembering, and this is Phillip Rivers over his career has a better split on the road out of games. He averages 2 more fantasy points per game on the road than at home. It's not to say he's always going to do better, but it is to say he's not one of those quarterbacks that struggle when he goes on the road.
All right, we're going to talk about quarterbacks in the context of our streaming quarterback segment. So I'm going to give us let's give some defenses out there before we move on to the quarterbacks. The Bengals this week are great. They take on the Browns.
The Patriots, I think you
love it.
You worry about the Steelers usually, but whenever you've got a Landry Jones-led team and a good defense cross, I would play them. I agree. I would rather have Cincinnati.
I'm going to throw out the Buccaneers versus the 49ers because the Bucs will be available. They were on bye, and there's nobody who held the Bucs over the bye week. If you did, you're not listening to this podcast.
Yeah, they're a possibility. I always get a little bit shaky when you start not a great defense.
I'm going to give you 2 words.
Kaepernick did
Colin Kaepernick.
He did enough against the Bills last week to score some points. I mean, he did put points on the board, but yeah, okay. Well, let's. You guys got any other defenses or anything else to talk about?
Those are the big guns.
Full stream ahead.
All right, we're going to kick off the full stream ahead section here. We're going to pass it to Jason first.
Look, there's a thing at the top that says what you're looking for in a stream, Jason.
Yeah, what you're looking for in a stream, usually we're looking for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's always going to get it done for fantasy. It's easy to find guys on the waiver wire that can do that. Sometimes you get locked into playing your quote-unquote stud quarterback when he's got kind of a bad matchup, and you end up not getting 250 and 2, whereas there's guys on the waiver you could do that from. I struggled with mine this week, mostly because there are 2 guys that I love as streaming candidates this week, and you both picked them first. So I'm just throwing this out there for our listeners because what matters to me is that people get it right. If either Mike or Andy's stream is available, go with theirs over mine. I would have done the same. I picked it, but I'm going to go with Alex Smith. Alex Smith is still available in most leagues. He plays the New Orleans Saints this week. We've seen all year that people do great against the New Orleans Saints, whether that's passing, whether that's running. We can see Spencer Ware and Jamaal Charles have great games against New Orleans, but we could see some of that come through the air. Both of those are good pass-catching backs. New Orleans gives up a lot of points. Vegas has this as only one of 2 games that are over 50 points on the over-under. I would love this if Alex Smith was doing what he usually does, which is run the ball. He runs 400 yards in a season, and I asked you guys a couple days ago.
This is crazy.
I was like, how many yards do you think Alex Smith has so far? And you guys were like, I don't know, 150, 200. Well, I don't remember your guesses, but it was up around there. And it was like, no, 19. And then I think this last week he ran for -3. So, Alex, if you're listening, you can run the ball on the Saints. Go ahead and do it.
It's okay if you want to run.
By the way, if the pass catchers for Kansas City, so I'm talking about Macklin and I'm talking about Kelsey, if they don't get it done this week against New Orleans, I'm going to be really out fantasy-wise on that passing game.
That's fine. And before I throw out my streamer, we want to honorably mention Kirk Cousins against the Lions and Andy Dalton against the Browns. They're
for sure.
They're both above the threshold we like to go with, but they are
in terms of ownership percentage.
In terms of ownership percentage, but they are both they're available in certain leagues.
Yeah, they're both available in over 30% of leagues.
So take a look at.
I believe they're both sitting on the waiver wire in our league.
Yes,
and I would grab.
So take a look at those guys. But I'm going to throw out Jameis Winston. He's coming off of the bye. This is the moment that we have been waiting for, and I'm talking specifically.
Mike, just specifically
no,
Mike's
No, me
okay.
as well.
I'm talking to the people who've been holding on Jameis Winston, who.
Or any buck.
Or it sounded like you said book.
Any buck.
Any buck. Look, San Francisco, Oakland, Atlanta, Chicago. Those are the next 4 matchups for the Buccaneers. Jameis Winston is set up for success. I know it's a cross-country trip. At least it's the easier of the trips. And San Francisco has allowed 2 passing touchdowns every game for the last month. At least 2 passing touchdowns.
Are you starting him?
In our league, he is currently set to start.
I like how you're like they've allowed at least 2 passing touchdowns for last month. What that makes me think is like, oh, okay, so what did they do? Just before that, you got this arbitrary cutoff. They gave up 4. It's like, yes,
I'm just saying at least 2. So Jameis Winston is a spectacular play.
All right, I like that take. I'm gonna give you the guy that last week I said it and I said it over and over again. Marcus Mariota, or as Goodell would say, Mariatu.
Your stream of the week. What a great pick by you.
Thank you. Look, just you come back to the well with my picks, and look, it's Marcus Mariota, 39 points 2 weeks ago, 38 last week, and then he gets that Indianapolis Colts. I don't know. Is it a tertiary? What's after a secondary?
It's the tertiary.
It's their tertiary back there. They have, suddenly Marcus Mariota's the 8th ranked. They're the 8th ranked. He's the 8th ranked quarterback. And he's only owned in 41% of leagues. He's a great stream. I'm thinking about playing him.
You put up 2 games in a row with almost 40 fantasy points, and that's going to propel you up high. But the thing that I like about it,
7 rushes in each of the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, he's run for, I believe, over 60 yards 2 weeks in a row. And when you do the math on, I think this
It's
last week
ridiculous.
he ran for like 68, 69 yards. You do the math and you extrapolate. It's basically like giving him an extra 160 yards passing. And so it's like, oh, he only threw for, 280. It's like, no, he threw for over 400 if you consider his running yards.
So those are our streams of the week. Hopefully you enjoyed the waiver show. And don't forget, you can go to the website, thefantasyfootballers.com. We have all of these streams and all of these, a number of different articles coming up today and throughout the week.
Tons of articles. Just
Innumerable amounts, millions and millions of articles going up this week. No? All right.
Kajillions!
Several. But yeah, check out the website, thefantasyfootballers.com. Visit us on Facebook. Check us out on Twitter at the FF Ballers. And if you want to follow us individually, you can do so. Mike?
I am at FF Hitman.
I am at Jason FFL.
I'm at Andy Holloway.
And we are
the Fantasy Footballers!
I could not participate in that. Although I was expecting, like, Cole Beasley to jump out and be like, heart! Beep, 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 heart!
All aboard! Beep, beep,
Look,
beep, beep.
if you've not been infected with the Beasles, you gotta get yourself together.
No, Jason clearly has not.
I had the Beasles when I was a kid, so I can't get it anymore.
You're immune.
I was gonna say, did you get a shot?
Yeah.
Yeah. So all right. By the way, I mean, here's one last thing we can muse on for just a second, because I feel like because of how well David Johnson played in the story we had, we didn't talk about the Jets. And so real quick, what is your take on this Jets offense? Are you a Brandon Marshall buyer just because he's going to get volume?
Yes.
Are you? Do you believe Ryan Fitzpatrick keeps that job?
Yes.
Do you believe that Bilal Powell, who outsnapped Matt Forte 39-21 yesterday, do you believe that Matt Forte needs to be shipped out of town? Speaking of your fantasy team.
No. I'm still okay with him.
It was a bad game.
Matchup.
I am reluctantly okay with Matt Forte as well. I do think, though, Brandon Marshall is a stud. People are not happy with the offense, with the quarterback situation. If anyone wants to sell him cheap, I am an absolute buyer. He had a very fine fantasy game against Patrick Peterson in a bad matchup.
See that catch he made with a hand in his face?
It was unbelievable. Brandon Marshall's matchup proof. He's going to be great. And honestly, he's had back-to-back weeks where he's had terrible matchups. He's been fine. Going forward, when he has better matchups, he's going to be great. Someone send me Brandon Marshall.
All right, that does it for today's show, guys. We'll be back tomorrow and throughout the rest of the week.
Absolutely. So check out fantasyjocks.com where winners go. Use the promo code FOOTBALLERS.
Don't forget to check out jointhefoot.com, our fantasy football community. Get involved with the show.
Yeah, get on over there.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter at the FF Ballers.